right beside me. As I get connected to every cable I have. Stephen, very nice to meet you. Stephen, what's your area of expertise?
I don't know if you could quantify any area of expertise.
Okay.
I'm a computer scientist who
Okay.
became a teacher and then a lecturer, and now I'm an academic evangelist, which means I speak a lot at conferences and to students and professors about new ways of developing software, and also about accessibility, where I talk about new ways of teaching and learning so that everyone, no matter what challenges they have with teaching and learning, and we all have some challenges in some way with teaching and learning, are facilitated so that no one gets left behind with education.
And what are you finding are the challenges at the moment?
I think there's a growing awareness that neurodiversity is something that it's underdiagnosed, and when it's diagnosed, it's often seen as a condition which can be treated. And sometimes it's more about, taking a people-first approach, that you don't have autism that you keep in your bag or your wallet. You are autistic, and that can affect how you engage with education in huge ways. And we have an amazing opportunity with technology that won't solve everything, but it will at least enable people who can learn in a different way to learn. That we're not just saying one size fits all. If you can't learn this way, in the olden days we just slapped you until you pretended to learn that way. Nowadays we have a better approach where we try to help everyone be on the same page as it is. And for me, that's using technology. It's worked for my kids, it's working for me, and it's about making sure that that's available to everybody.
Yeah. I teach tennis to kids, and sometimes a parent or one of the other coaches will tell me, this kid is on the spectrum, or one of the kids is on the spectrum, and I wouldn't necessarily notice that. Sometimes I see it's a trust issue with them as well, that they have an approach to the world that they not necessarily have an issue, but it's an approach that they're using, and sometimes you can break past that. Technology. Sometimes the world doesn't want you to record things. That's the way I look at it as well. Is there anything in terms of sports and stuff like that, or that you're working with, any groups that you're working with?
Yes, so there is a condition which is very common and not much is known about it by people who don't have it, which is called dyspraxia. And dyspraxia is often when I was a kid, it was that kid is clumsy, or they're not good at GAA, or they don't catch the ball well. And it's has a comorbid diagnosis with autism and ADHD, but not always, but it's quite common. And you can meet children who have a sensory processing disorder, and it could take the form of dyspraxia, where when they're playing sports, there's two elements. One, coordination is a challenge, and it can be that balance is an issue, where it can be very frustrating for the child who is trying to engage but physically finds it hard to, say, catch a ball. And it could be swinging a tennis racket, where they're making a huge effort, and it's a huge extra effort, and they are interested, but they don't seem to be able to do it in the same way. And then on the other side of it, which is really interesting in sports, that playing computer games is something lots of kids like. And if you can make the computer game a physical thing where they're interacting, for instance...
with the Wii.
Exactly, and with the Kinect camera, which for Xbox, which I've developed software for, if you have a child that, say, has cerebral palsy, or you have an adult who's stroke rehabilitation, who's had a stroke, and they have to start doing these stretches, which they've never had to do, but suddenly they have to retrain their brain and recover. And with a child who's 4 with cerebral palsy is told you have to stretch 100 times a day, they're not very interested in that. If you turn it into a physical game, where they're playing a physical game where they have to stretch to catch something falling out of the sky or something, we've discovered, and we have published research, that when you're using a video console or a computer with a body tracking camera, and you make it a game, but it's actually the physical exercise the child or the adult has to do, that they will engage and stretch further, higher, whatever the right word is, for longer when it's a game than when this is an exercise you have to do. And that's fascinating, because it could bring the whole gamification of everything in our life. Did you get enough likes? Did you get enough tweets? Into the, well, did you stretch high enough? And if you can make it easy for researchers and developers to incorporate that technology, which has become very cheap. This used to be something that was incredibly expensive, that no one would buy unless they were a very well-funded clinic. And now it's something that you can buy in your local Tesco, plug into your computer and work away from. That's very exciting, because making the technology simple and easy to consume is what my research area is in. But it's also, you're actually helping more people than you realised, because if you think of sports,
it's like
it's a universal
the
thing.
help.
Yeah, sports is a universal thing. But if you say, sorry, you can't play it, that's no good. Instead, if you say you can play it, and also it'll be good for you, not just because you're healthy and running around, but because it's going to help with whatever condition is that your rehabilitation is focused on. That's exciting, and everyone can benefit from. I don't play a lot of team sports. That's not my thing. But as a socializing tactic, team sports are wonderful, especially for children who have ASD and find it difficult to communicate their feelings and desires. This is something that actually helps them. And I have a son who's 15, and he loves dodgeball. And dodgeball is a team sport in a way, but not in another way. But he can get very frustrated when people aren't doing what he thinks is the best strategy to win. And it actually becomes a way of, if you play the team sport, if you engage, that you can learn socializing tactics, which are often as important as being good at the game itself. And that's something that I didn't have in school. In school, it was, the team was effectively 15 individuals, running around trying to score the goals, independent of everyone else. When you work together and you learn to work together, and technology can actually analyse how well you're working together, that's a really interesting thing to start saying, gamifying it. Can I be a better team player? Can I be better at understanding the signals that aren't verbal, but that I need to pick up on, but I'm having difficulty picking up on them for whatever reason?
I'd love to speak to you some more, Stephen. Just some of the things you said twigged some memories about this July teaching kids tennis, particular ones that would have, say, an injury where they can't move their ankle or something like that, where you could put a ball just enough, far enough away from them that they would have to stretch to go for the ball. Or I remember I had difficulty with these 5-year-olds, teaching them how to catch a ball. And what I realised was, you're almost getting them to teach themselves how to catch it, teaching them how, or they're teaching themselves how to catch a ball when you just throw a ball at them. And I went home one evening and I was like, really kind of frustrated. I was like, dude, there's something wrong with this method of teaching a child how to catch in the first place. And I took the ball out of the situation the next day, and I showed them pulling your hand or taking your hands from far away. A lot of kids will catch up to their chin. I took the ball out of the equation, and I demonstrated how you bring your hands quickly from the side and slow down very rapidly when you get to the ball. And the next day there were 2 kids missing, so that day they all learned how to catch a ball a particular way with no ball. And the next day there were 2 kids that weren't there the day before, and I found the kids teaching the kids that weren't there. I didn't have to explain it. The kids turned to the other children, or the children that weren't there, and started demonstrating this process. And it's interesting what you said. I would love to speak to you some more.
There's 2 aspects on what you said there which is interesting, and it actually came up today at congregation, that people are talking about their life hacks, and my life hack in the first room is that to really know something and to be an expert on it, you have to teach it, and teachers know this. But I was a lecturer for a long time, and the nature of lecturing in computer science is that technology changes so much. Unless you're very lucky in teaching a very formal mathematical subject, it'll be different next year if you have to teach it. So you're effectively always learning your subject that you're meant to be an expert on, but it's changed from last year, so you can either become not an expert on it, or you can keep learning. And the process of teaching, which the children were doing when they're teaching their friends, with something that they only learned yesterday, they actually get better at themselves by teaching it to someone else, because they identify the areas they didn't quite get the first time, because they're on the fly fixing. And the same thing happens when you're a teacher or a lecturer. You realise, I didn't actually understand that when I learned it, but I understand it better now.
And IT is such a I built servers for nearly 20 years and look after networks, and you're constantly teaching. So IT has this thing where it's constantly changing. You're constantly educating yourself. Even if you go to quote for a particular job, if the technology changes, the whole quote changes for the job. So it is an interesting industry, or an interesting
And it's funny,
thing
like,
to be in.
my whole job is talking to people about cloud computing, and for some people they still have no idea what that is, and for some people they know it's worrying them. But I went into a company last week where my son, who's 15 now, is doing his transition year work placement, and they make thermometers. It's an amazing little company called SensorTech, and they make thermometers, and for food industry, and you plug the thermometer into the food in your deli. You've seen these thermometers, whether you realize it or not, to make sure that that food is safe, right temperature. And I'd written the software when I was about 20 that calibrates the thermometers, make sure that they're processed right in the factory, a little factory, and that a certificate is printed so that the company knows that this thermometer has been tested and is perfect, and so on. And they were showing my son Jack the computer which had the software on it, which I had written now, over 20 years ago. And Jack wasn't impressed because it's just a computer, but they were showing him a Dell computer which they had carefully bought on eBay because they were afraid to change any aspect of the software system. And I said to Jack, Jack, what would you do with that software? And he goes, would you not just put it on the internet, which is Jack's way of saying put it on the cloud? And you're like, yeah, why? Because then they wouldn't have to keep buying that same old computer. And he had never even seen a desktop type computer. It's all laptops and tablets nowadays. And it's just to show that how much the industry has changed from years ago when that was state of the art. Buy a lovely Dell desktop, install the software on it, and that's where it was forever. And now it's a case of, sure, you can access that software from anywhere. It's just Java. We'll stick it up on the web. It'll be fine. And that is a huge change. Yet we're still, it's still my job is to help. We have professors who are saying to me, I know I have to teach cloud, but I don't really know what to teach. And my job is constantly learning it myself so I can teach it to the next person.
Stephen, very nice to meet you. It's been a pleasure to talk to Stephen Howell.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for coming to Congregation again this year and bringing all your knowledge. It's really important. And hopefully get to talk to you later on. And I hope you enjoy your day.
Thank you very much.